welcome Mike Smith and Annika Rice.
Glad you could join us this evening. Welcome to Family Trees, the programme that is going to blow open the roots of somebody's family tree without them even knowing about it. It's a big surprise. What you got in store tonight?
Tonight it's a story that takes us around the world, across the sea and to the watery depths as well.
Watery depths. And now to the depths of a Thames television studio, because let's meet our genealogical expert, the Family Trees expert, Cecil Humphrey-Smith. Now, Hump, what sort of family should we look for in our studio audience this evening?
One of considerable interest, and I would hope very peaceable.
A peaceable family. A gentle family tree is on the way for you. First of all, some gentle clues. If you're in our studio audience tonight, could this be your family?
Anything from that film?
Certo. Posso rivelare che stasera parleremo dell'albero genealogico della famiglia Gandy.
Exactly. Well, does anyone know what that meant? Ah, what language was that?
It means that tonight it's the Gandy family tree.
Well, that's the right family.
Yay! It's the Gandy family. We want Isabel and Rachel and Mary and Michael come out and join us because it's your family tree tonight. Come and join us. There. And Rachel and Mary and Michael. Well. Calm down now. Don't get too excited here. I can see there's a big shock. Now, how did you spot the Italian, Michael?
Well, I teach Italian at a school in North London.
Ah, right. So you translate that straight away. We better say here many thanks indeed to Tony Liotti, who is the man who was planted in the audience there. Thank you, Tony. Now, we also better explain, before people think that Sir Richard Attenborough is going to come bounding onto the set to receive another award, that the spelling of your name is completely different from that name, isn't it?
Gandy.
Yeah. Remember we mentioned watery depths way back at the start of the programme? Right, watery depths was the big clue. Two new relatives of yours have found out what we mean.
Well, Isabel and Rachel, here are two new relatives of yours at Liverpool Docks. Meet John Gandy and his brother Michael. And you've got a lot in common, as John explains.
We're related, distant cousins, although we've never met. And that means we share a mystery in our family tree. We're about to meet a very famous group from here in Liverpool who are going to tell us all about it. It's none other than the Spinners.
Hiya! Hello, Michael. Welcome aboard, lad. Welcome aboard. Would you like to take a seat over there? There you go.
Right, lads, I'd like to take you right back to December 1909. On a dark and stormy night, and there was a small ship called the Ellen Vannin. She used to sail these same waters. And an ancestor of yours was aboard this night when they had a terrible disaster. So unfortunately, the story doesn't have a happy ending.
Snaefell, Tynwald, Ben Macree, 14 ships have sailed the sea, proudly bearing a man's name. But there's one we'll never again.
Oh, Ellen Vannin of the Island Man Company. Oh, Ellen Vannin, lost in the Irish Sea.
With a crew of 21 Manx men, her passengers, Liverpool businessmen. Farewell to mourners, I'll farewell. this little ship was bound for hell.
Oh, Ellen Fannin of the Isle of Man Company. Oh, Ellen Fannin, lost in the Irish Sea.
Less than a mile from the Barlight ship, by a mighty wave, Ellen Fannin was hit. She sank in the waters of Liverpool Bay. There she lies to this day.
Oh, Ellen Fannin of the Isle of Man Company. Oh, Ellen Fannin, lost in the Irish Sea.
The Ellen Fannin left the Isle of Man for Liverpool on December 1909 with a crew of 21 and 14 passengers, including your ancestor Mary Gandy. She never reached her destination. Broken and smashed by hurricane-force winds and 24-feet-high waves. As dawn arrived, the brave Ellen Fannin was at her final resting place at the bottom of this stretch of water.
You Manx men now remember the 3rd day of the month December, a terrible storm in 1909. Ellen Fannin sailed for the very last time.
Oh, Ellen Fannin of the Isle of Man Company. Oh, Ellen Fannin, lost in the Irish Sea.
Oh, thank you very much indeed to the Spinners there for helping us with that strange and mysterious connection. But we also have a surprise for you because we have your newfound relations with us this evening. So will you welcome from Warrington, John and Michael Gandy. No great mishaps making that film for us?
No, not really.
But you did that well. But certainly it didn't look like it was going to sink that day, did it?
No.
What a strange tale it was. What have you got here?
T-shirt.
T-shirt which says on it, can we see that? The Isle of Man Steam Packet Company, which of course was featured very much in that song the Spinners sung for us there. And I'm sure you'd actually like to give those to your two new relations here, Isabel and Rachel, wouldn't you? Okay. All right, meet Michael and John. There you are. Isabel and Rachel, Michael and John. You go and sit over there. That's lovely. All the way from Warrington. Now, we mentioned the Northwest connection there, and Annie has been out filming to get to the roots of that particular matter. And let's find out all about the Northwest and your family tree.
Now, Isabel and Rachel, I'm here in the heart of the Cheshire countryside in the village of Frandley, where the roots of your family tree lie. In fact, there are records of the Gandy family here going right back to the 1500s.
But I'm on the trail of a connection that starts in the 1650s. Well, it starts just up here and ends up, surprisingly enough, at the White House with one of the most powerful jobs in the world. Well, this is the site of a farm that was owned and worked by one of your ancestors, William Gandy, who was born in 1625. Now, apart from being a farmer, William was also one of the pioneers of a new religious group, because William was one of the first Quakers, and it was because of that that he eventually came to lose this farm.
The Society of Friends meeting house stands on the outskirts of the farm, and here I met local historian Anne Loder.
What's the significance of these buildings?
Well, this site was given to the local Quakers by William Gandy in the 1600s. It wasn't originally as you see it now. This building was built in 1726, but over there was a beautiful old-fashioned building which was, we think, on the site originally when it was given to the Quakers.
Why did the Quaker religion cause so much controversy? I mean, what are the main beliefs?
Well, the main beliefs are that you don't need a priest or a minister or a bishop to help you to reach God. The government thought that the Quakers were plotting against them. They couldn't believe that they were doing anything as ordinary as just meeting together and worshipping. And so they were very badly persecuted to begin with.
Where does the name Quaker come from?
Well, it was a derogatory expression, really, which was coined by a magistrate, because when they got worked up in their meetings for worship, which were held mostly in silence, when they felt that God had come through to them, they sort of quaked and trembled before the Lord.
Well, what was William Gandy's part in all this?
Well, he was one of the very early Quakers. He was a friend of George Fox, who started the Quaker movement. And George Fox used to stay with him quite regularly.
Well, this is the actual tree stump that George Fox used on June the 28th, 1657, when he addressed an enormous crowd on your ancestors' land. More than 2,000 people came to listen to him. But by now the authorities were really beginning to clamp down on Quakerism, with fines, imprisonment, and even worse.
And on Midsummer's Day, 1677, as this original document shows, a Justice of the Peace came to a meeting at the house of William Gandy, shut up the doors and placed a guard of soldiers on the building. The windows were bolted, all entrances and exits padlocked, and instant fines, confiscation of money, goods and belongings were ordered.
Because of that terrible persecution, William was forced to sell this farm. Well, some later Gandys moved to Warrington, which is quite near here, and they turned from farmers to industry, but we'll hear more about that later. And as for William's daughter Ellen, well, she took another course. Because in 1682, Ellen set sail on the Welcome for the New World and a new life in America, and that leads us to an incredible set of connections.
The Welcome was the first boat to take settlers to Pennsylvania, named after its chief sponsor, William Penn, who was aboard with Ellen. And once there, it was this Pennsylvanian connection that leads to 37th American President Richard Nixon.
Well, after all that, I think it's time we took a break. Back in a moment with more surprises.
What's it? The light cheesy snack from Golden Wonder. It's what a snack's all about. What?
What's it all about? What's it?
How was training, Dave?
No problem. Wish I could say the same about these spots.
This is what the other lads use. Biactol.
Look, this is how a spot starts. A blocked skin pore.
Wash every day with Biactol instead of ordinary soap, and it removes dirt and grease.
And helps kill the bacteria that cause the spots.
How's the spots now, Dave?
I bet it's worse one of Gary's goals.
Biactol. Fewer spots just by daily washing.
How do you celebrate 25 years of outstanding personal service? And what can it be like to have reigned for 60 years, 40 of them a widow? What was it like to be a prince in the Falklands War? And when do you start grooming the future King of England?
The Royal Family, a compelling 24-part series to collect and keep forever on the family we love as well as our own.
Hill's Bronchial Balsam for adult coughs. Extra strong, thick, and very effective. Hill's Bronchial Balsam, a powerful cough remedy.
Radio rentals are the biggest in the land. They've got so many of these, they can always whiz round you jolly fast. So, if your radio rentals telly ever goes on the blink, they'll fix it or replace it in a jiffy. No wonder they're the biggest. Radio rentals, we got to be biggest by giving our best.
Welcome back to family trees. Well, just now we heard about a connection that took us across the Atlantic. Let's now zip back across the pond again and meet another famous relative who's English. And the name is synonymous with one of the most beautiful places in Britain.
This is the area that your ancestor called Wessex, and it's an area of almost breathtaking beauty that he explored as a child. He was born here in 1840, and he lived and worked in the area's principal town, which he called Casterbridge.
Well, I'm at Casterbridge, although the maps officially call it Dorchester, and I'm in the heart of what is known as Hardy country. Because it was your relative, Thomas Hardy, who took this whole area and transformed it into the setting for his novels. Those novels like Tessa the D'Urbervilles, Return of the Native, Far from the Madding Crowd.
It's here, for example, that the mayor of Casterbridge would walk in Hardy's novel of the same name. And here is the rather morbid location of the hangman's cottage. It was here that as a 16-year-old, Hardy scaled the railings to peep into the cottage, and he saw the hangman eating his dinner. And later, Hardy witnessed a public execution, scenes that were later to appear in his novels. Here in the centre of Dorchester, the Mayor of Casterbridge was written, where Hardy lived from 1883 to 1885, and stories are set at the Corn Exchange and Town Hall, like a man selling his wife at the Prior's Fair. And here at what is now a bank is the house that is reputed to be the home of Henchard, Hardy's Mayor of Casterbridge. And this is the King's Arms Hotel, where Bathsheba was carried after fainting in Far from the Madding Crowd. And in the Mayor of Casterbridge, the magnificent upstairs bow-windowed drawing room was the scene of a great public meeting controlled by Henchard. But it's a few miles to the east of Dorchester that we travel to find another important landmark on the Hardy Trail. This is the sleepy village of Puddletown, where many of Hardy's relations lived and worked.
But it was actually here in Puddletown that Hardy's stories and characters first came to life. This is where Hardy's cousins, the Antles, used to live and work. Well, old John was a shoemaker, and he used to sit and work in this very room with his 4 colleagues, while Hardy would stand in the middle reciting from the chapter he had just written.
And just to read Hardy is to see the landscape that inspired your ancestor to write some of his most beautiful prose. In his own words, from the Mayor of Casterbridge, the landscape comes alive. The airy uplands and cornfields, the moist and misty lowlands, miles of rotund down and concave field.
Well, this beautiful church is St Michael's at Stinsford, and it's here that Thomas Hardy came to worship as a small boy, and it's also where he finally came to rest.
It was at this church that Thomas's father and his father's father sung in the choir, and it's here that generations of Thomas's ancestors and his wife Emma lie.
Well, this is it. Let's see what it says here. Here lies the heart of Thomas Hardy. And down below, his ashes rest in Poets' Corner, Westminster Abbey. Isn't it appropriate that his heart should still lie here in the middle of Hardy country?
I've got something for you here which I think you're going to love. A couple of books, especially for you, Isabel and Rachel. These are Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd, and just inside the front cover is a picture of Thomas Hardy himself. So there's one for you and one for Rachel as well. There you are. Here are your Thomas Hardy books, okay? You can read those when you get home. But now we've got to zip across here and join Humph for the next connection in the family tree, because we found that the earliest known use of the name Gandy was William de Gandy. Now, he fought in the Battle of Crécy, which was in the 14th century, so that makes for a pretty old family name, doesn't it? What's the meaning of it?
Well, in fact, it goes back a bit further than that. And I think the clue to it is in the de, meaning that it must have come from a place name. And I look at the terminal letter, the Y, which has a variety of meanings, I would think, probably meaning a stream. And so one must go looking back into Celtic times, probably, for some man called Gander, who settled down by a stream, and his people that descended from him, or who descended from where it came from, named Gandy.
No connection with Goosey Gander?
No, I think if you take a long shot at it, there's an ordnance survey map locally around Macclesfield in Cheshire. That's where you'll find Gandy's Brook to this day.
Well, you must look that out whenever you're around Macclesfield in Cheshire. But there's another side of your family tree we're going to tell you about now. It's on your mother's side. It's the McColl side of the family tree, and they were on the receiving end of one of the biggest ever massacres.
Well, lurking in the audience here is another newfound relative of yours, and he can tell us all about that.
Mostas Maraga van Kajikuva, kom ik kodde, I kobotte, the klarklotte, kutjes in shuurtig, na happen. Tratorio varag.
Now, did anybody in the family actually recognise that at all? No? No, you don't understand that? You should do, because you've got some Gaelic connections there, because that was Gaelic. Luckily, the man who told us all about that can speak a good deal of English as well, and he will tell us a bit more about the story now. He is journalist and broadcaster and your new relative, Paul McInnes. Come and join us, Paul. Paul, welcome to Family Trees. You can have a good chat with the new family later on this evening. But there seems to be tragedy coming up in this family tree all the time. Now, this massacre sounds terrifying.
Well, it must have been pretty terrifying for the McCalls and for all the other clans at Culloden. They were outnumbered and outgunned by the Hanoverians, but the McCalls were traditionally standard-bearers, bannermen to the Stuarts of Appin, and they were at Culloden with the Stuarts. And it's told that 9 of them were slain as they defended the Stuart ensign, but the ensign did get back to Appin eventually. There's an unsupported story that they wrapped the ensign around the body of one of the slain and then played round it and got it back to Appin that way, but it did get back to Appin eventually.
All this mystery and tragedy. You're lucky your family tree's actually grown bigger than a twig with all this going on, aren't you? Now, there is a happier side to the Scottish connection in your family, and Paul's been working on this. He's come up with rather a nice little surprise. I think you'll like this. The one with the bagpipes there was Pipe Major Bob Murphy. He's from the Caledonian Highlanders, and what he delivered here is this magnificent Scottish dish, and that's like sausage meat and all sorts of things inside a pig's stump. I'm putting you off here. I tell you what, you take a look at that later on, all right? Don't you worry about it too much at all. Okay, let's get slap bang up to date with a new relative of yours that you've never met before. One of the most famous pop stars around. He has a message, especially for you.
Hello, Isabel and Rachel. I'm delighted to find that we're related. Yes, relations. Long-lost relations. I'm sorry that I can't be with you this evening. I hope you're having a fabulous day. I hope you're having a fabulous time in the studio. I'm actually not here. I'm in Atlantic City this week, appearing in America, having a terrific time. This is actually my recording studio. I'm just about to put some piano on here. I've got a couple of albums here for you. Some copies of the new album. I hope we're going to be meeting you very soon, because you're going to be coming to see me play at Blazers in Windsor later this year. I hear that we share some very interesting relatives. There's Thomas Hardy, I believe, my Aunt Winnie, my Aunt Queenie. Very fascinating people. Even Richard Nixon. Anyway, we'll talk about it all backstage when we meet up. Have a fabulous evening.
Thank you, Leo Sayer. here are the albums he sent along, and one more thing he did actually autograph them. So there's one there for Rachel, if you'd like to pass that one along to Rachel, and there's one for you, Isabel, 2 Leo Sayer albums for you. And one more thing, before you go this evening, what we always do on Family Trees is to give you a copy of your own personally written family tree. There it is, from those 13th century connections right the way down here, all through the years, right down to your 2 names right here at the bottom, Isabel and Rachel, because that is the Gandy family tree. Take that. Good. Well, that is it from Family Trees for this week. Thank you once again for joining us, and watch out for your roots, because it could be your family tree next week. Bye-bye.
Tomorrow at the same time, 5:15, Jethro's family tree causes a calamitous crisis for the Beverly Hillbillies.
New Timotei shampoo. So mild, you can wash your hair as often as you wish. Containing natural herb extracts, Timotei always leaves your hair soft and shining, with the fresh smell of summer meadows. Timotei, so mild, you can wash your hair as often as you wish.
7 Seas Vit C Plus captures the vitamin C goodness of black currants in a capsule. So when you're advancing in years or are a new or expectant mum, it's good to know that all the vitamin C goodness you need a day comes in a taste-free capsule from Boots or your local chemist. Vit C Plus from 7 Seas.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many kids she didn't know what to do. So she went to the shop for McVitie's bar cakes. She knew there were a dozen things she could make. There's ginger, golden syrup, orange and lemon. They tasted so delicious the kids thought they were in heaven. The moral, dear friends, is simple to take. You can do a dozen things with a McVitie's bar cake. And that's no fairy tale.
If you're looking for an older, more established home in the Northwest without all the usual problems, look through the Millbury Home File. We've homes of all sizes and prices acquired through our part exchange scheme, each thoroughly inspected to ensure it earns our full seal of approval. There's fitted carpets, discounts for quick completion, mortgage help, and always immediate availability. For your free copy of the Millbury Home File, ring 061 789 5831 now.
The new Orient Express and a new murder. The murderer covered her tracks with dazzling thoroughness on every surface. Wood, glass, metal. Would there be any clues left for our detective?
An extremely polished job, a brilliant shine. It has to be sparkle. But haven't they overlooked a clue?
Sparkle. Simply brilliant.
Sheer beauty for you to see, sheer pleasure for you and me. There'll be sheer fun every day and night. Sheer kings of the road, sheer friendship you will find, sheer value your pocket and mind. There is sheer choice, it's sheer delight. Shearing kings of the road.
Book Shearing's Coach Holidays for bigger choice and better value for money than ever, with some exciting new destinations for 84. See your travel agent now or phone this number for your free brochures.
Shearing kings of the road. Shearing's kings of the road.
When your car won't start, New Car Fix It tells you where to start. In issue 1, what causes 90% of starting problems. Photographs help you find the part to work on. There are tips, like how a loudspeaker can get you out of trouble, and diagrams to put it all back together. Car Fix It Divides jobs into easy stages. Shows how you can get away without special tools. How your car works. So, if your car belongs on the road, New Car Fix It belongs on your shelf.
Tomorrow on Channel 4, Gardener's Calendar.
Well, it's February and we're thinking about covering strawberry, forcing strawberry so we get fruits around about the end of May, early June when they're pound a pound.
It's time to prepare the potatoes for planting.
The ideal size for a seed potato is about hen's egg size, about that size.
And plans are divulged how ground like this can turn into a garden like this. All in Gardener's Calendar, tomorrow at 6:30 on Channel 4.
On Granada, This Is Your Right is in 15 minutes, followed by Crossroads at 6:05. Both programmes follow the news.
The news at 5:45 with Carol Barnes.
Ulster prison governors say the government's partly to blame for the maize breakout. Nissan are coming to Britain, but they won't bring many jobs. And how even British Telecom are left hanging on the line. Good evening. Northern Ireland prison governors say they have proof that the Northern Ireland office was at fault when 38 IRA men broke out from the maze last year. They claim the office ordered top security prisoners out of their cells so they could work. But prison staff gave repeated warnings that this gave the men too much freedom. The Hennessy report last week blamed prison staff and carelessness for the breakout, and the governor resigned.
The men who run Northern Ireland's prisons live in a world dominated by security. Normally, they're not even named, as they're obvious terrorist targets. The fact that more than 40 of them have put their names against a public statement is unique and reflects their concern that it was the politicians that brought about Britain's biggest ever jailbreak and that those politicians have escaped without blame. The governors have produced a 5-page statement citing cases of alleged political pressure brought to bear on the governor, which they say contributed to the escape. They say government pressure resulted in Brendan McFarlane being appointed a prison orderly. He used the freedom of movement that went with the job to mastermind the jailbreak. The Hennessy report blamed the assistant governor in charge of H Block 7 and said such appointments were serious errors of judgment. But the governor's statement claims McFarlane got the job because of pressure from the Northern Ireland office to find work for Republican prisoners at the end of the 1982 no-work protest. They say all prisoners had to be included, even McFarlane. The governors claim the politicians were well aware of the situation they were creating. There was day-to-day contact between the Northern Ireland office and the governor who had to allocate the prison jobs. The prison governors say had it not been for political interference, Brendan McFarlane would have spent most of his time in the cells instead of having the freedom to organise the jailbreak. The Northern Ireland office is refusing to comment on the governor's allegations. Paul Davis, ITN, in Belfast.
The government have confirmed that the Japanese car giant Nissan are coming to Britain, but their plant will at first create only 400 or 500 new jobs, instead of the thousands that have been hoped for. The Trade and Industry Secretary, Mr. Norman Tebbit, signed the deal today with Nissan's president, Mr. Ishihara. Later, he told MPs the development could be employing 2,700 people by the 1990s. But one of the engineers' union leaders, Mr. Ken Gill, called the plan a body blow to British Leyland. Nissan will name the site for their new plant shortly. It's expected to be in Sunderland, North Humberside or South Wales.
Before Mr. Ishihara decided to build a car plant here, he had to be convinced that our poor industrial relations record was a thing of the past, and that government grants would be available if the plant went to an area of high unemployment. But today, he wasn't naming the site.
We're going to send our team to this country again to narrow down the sites to say a few by the end of February.
Rival manufacturers have suggested the new factory might be just an assembly plant for imported kits. But if Mr. Ishihara's choice of transport is anything to go by, at least he appears to be thinking British. This afternoon, he signed the deal with Mr. Tebbit, who later told the Commons the government would provide £35 million to encourage full development. He also said it meant 24,000 fewer Japanese cars would be imported. Instead, they'd be made in Britain. Phil Roman, ITN, London.
TUC and civil service leaders came face-to-face with Mrs. Thatcher today, but she refused to change her mind on banning unions at the Cheltenham Communication Centre. The union said they'd campaigned to lift the ban, and the two sides have agreed to talk again.
Protest on behalf of the whole trade union movement, the delegation was led by the TUC's Len Murray. The offer by Mrs Thatcher of a further meeting came only at the end of the 2-hour session. The basic message about the two sides' positions was still the same.
The Prime Minister made clear that the government's decision and the offer to GCHQ staff stand. The Prime Minister also said that if the unions wished to meet her again, she would be prepared to do so, and the union accepted that offer.
And you're ready then, Sir Geoffrey, for what seems like a confrontation with the unions on this issue?
No, we believe that our position is right. We've considered very carefully, both before today's discussion and at today's discussion, what is the right way to achieve the necessary objectives for national security.